We are in week 4. This is the final week of the series we've been walking through called Stuck, which is actually about getting unstuck. The tagline has been "Get out and stay out," and I just again, in case you're new here, that's not our motto as a church. Get out and stay out. We love having people come in, but we're convinced that Jesus can help us find freedom for whatever we're struggling with. Now, I don't know if as we've been walking through this series, whether you've had a moment with me, wondering why we went the direction we went. Maybe you were looking for some really practical handles or something, and then I started with week 1 talking about how we have an enemy that's actually dedicated to keeping us stuck. But we noticed that Jesus came to get us unstuck, right? He came to set us free, and that Jesus has actually done all the work that will ever be necessary for us to find freedom. It's just a matter of believing him for what he's already done, right? And then we watched Jesus attack someone's stuckness. In other words, help somebody get unstuck. We said, okay, what's he going to do? What's he going to focus on? And we watched him in 2 different stories the last 2 weeks go after people's identity. And so we watched a guy named Zacchaeus, a taker, if there ever was one. This is his entire life dedicated to taking from others. We watched him transform into a giver by Jesus speaking into him, welcoming him, and declaring that he was a son. Right? This is crazy stuff. And then last week we talked about this parable that Jesus told, a story where he talked about these sons that were living estranged from their father because they couldn't get past the fact that they were servants when he really wanted sons. Right? He's like, that's great and all. I'm glad that you're listening to me, but I want you to be a son. We realized last week, and this is what I want to build on this week, that if you only see yourself as a servant of God, you'll probably remain stuck because there are things that a servant doesn't even think they have access to. Only a son or a daughter of God could think that they have access to a father. And it's the Father who sent Jesus to set us free. So we have to understand this. So today, I actually am going to give you some practical handles, and I'm going to do it by telling you another story from the New Testament. And as I do this, I just want to pause just really quick, and I want to give you the key today to an exciting Bible. If you're like many church people the world over, or even if you're not a church person, you picked up the Bible, you try to read it, sometimes it doesn't really do much for you. Here's a key, and I want you to use it today. The key to an exciting Bible, according to James, was actually Jesus' brother, is this. He says, as you're looking into the scriptures, the Bible, he says, what you need to be looking for is yourself in the mirror. If you're looking at a story, you're reading a story or a passage, and you can see how you would connect with that story, or how you can relate to one of the characters, or you can relate to one of the principles or concepts, if you see yourself in the mirror, that means God is speaking to you about your life, and then as you respond to God through what he's laid on your heart, what he's highlighted you for, if you do something about what you see in the mirror, your life is transformed by the power of God, by the power of Jesus. So just a little hint, as we're going through this story today, I want you to look for yourself in the mirror. Because half of the people here are women, so you're going, oh, it's about a guy, not about me. Wrong, right? So we're gonna broaden our perspective a little bit. You can elbow the guys next to you, but we all know it's about all of us, okay? So what I want to talk to you about a guy is he's a guy who's stuck, and he's stuck on something really interesting. This is a guy who literally lives on a rectangle. His life is that small. His life is defined by the 4 edges of a rectangle. It's actually a mat that he spends his days on. He's lying on this mat. And you could say his life has shrunk to the point where his entire existence is framed by these 4 corners. Do you ever feel closed in like that? Now, the funny thing is, these 4 corners might as well be walls, because he never ventures past the edge. He lives his entire life stuck there. Now, we don't know what his name was, and I kind of felt sorry for him, so I'm going to call him Jack. Jack, not his real name, or maybe I could, that's in the Hebrew, Jack, original language, something of some sort. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the story from the book of John. It's chapter 5, and if you don't have a Bible with you today, don't worry about it. You can get one at the back, by the way. We have a Bible app, and it's free these days, right? But I'm actually going to have it on the screen. But what I want you to look for is, as we're reading this guy's story, what are the 4 walls that he's being confined by? I'm going to help you find them, and once we find them, we're going to watch what Jesus does with those 4 walls, okay? So here is how the story goes. In Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, there's a pool, which has 5 porticos. Porticos are porches. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. And one man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he'd been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be well, or be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I've no one to put me into the pool when the water stirred up, and while I'm making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Now, there's something going on here that I need to probably explain to you. There's some weird mythology going on, some weird mojo, and this is what he's kind of stuck in. Okay, so I just need to explain this to you. But what I want to focus on here is the fact that these 4 walls that he's living in, or these 4 boundaries that he's living in, defined literally by the shape of this mat. The mat is figurative and literal for him. Can be broken down into 4 different areas. Watch this. So the first one is his unresolved, this is where I'm doing the mirror trick. Whoa, it's him, it's you, it's us, right? So what the first one is, what is really obvious in his case, he's got some unresolved brokenness in his life. And again, it's really obvious for him. He can't walk. He's an invalid. We don't know. Is he paralyzed? Does he have one leg drastically shorter than the other? We have no idea exactly what his problem was. What we do know is that he had been lying there a very long time, and that his life was defined by that brokenness. Everything about his life was defined by that brokenness. The size of his life had been drastically limited by this disability that he had. And now again, you could go, well, I don't have a physical disability. Maybe some of you do, but I think our brokenness sometimes lies beneath the surface. So his was really obvious. He also had some stuff underneath the surface. But what I want you to do in your own life is to think of something that you might be still struggling with, some brokenness or pain, something that happened to you that isn't quite resolved, that is now confining you in your present life. Now, some of us might go, well, I really don't think I have anything. I mean, sure, there's some painful things that have happened in my life, but I put those behind me. Now, what we need to know about our brokenness is that others see it better than we do. Right? You're like, no, I'm good. But my friend, he's a piece of work. This guy, right? You think and when you hear your friend, every time you try to help him out, help a brother out, you're trying to poke, maybe you're not quite done with that. He's no, I put that behind me. That is water under the bridge, and you're going, no, you're on the stream. It's carrying you still. That brokenness is defining you. That thing, you think you've let it go, but you haven't let it go. Right? You can see it in someone else. So the question becomes, how do we see it in ourselves? Well, I just kind of hinted at it. God's word, the Bible, is like a mirror you can hold up to yourself, and you can see yourself in it so that you can see your blind spots. So there are things you didn't know are on your face until you look in the mirror, and that's what we're doing today as we're looking into the Bible. But there are other clues in this scripture that show us how to discern whether we might have some unresolved brokenness in our own life. And so that's what's going to happen next. So for example, in Jack's case, his plans or his path was literally built on his brokenness or built around his brokenness. And so when your brokenness in your life, the pain in your life, or the things you're struggling with aren't resolved, your life plan, your path, will either be designed to help you avoid that from then on, or it will be this ongoing attempt to try and fix yourself. So if it's not resolved, you can't just move on. It's defining you in some way. either, again, you're avoiding it, and this is what happens when you say, oh yeah, Caleb and I had this thing, and we and he totally hurt my feelings, and I see him coming down the street, and I cross the street so I don't have to talk to him. When I find out maybe Caleb's going to this party that I thought I was going to, no, I don't want to go anymore because Caleb will be there. What is that? I've got brokenness in my life that I am not facing, and my plan is designed around avoiding that brokenness. I don't want to face up to it, and so I do everything I can to avoid that, right? Now, in this guy's case, in Jack's case, his whole life plan is built around his brokenness, and this is where the pool comes in. This is kind of interesting. So the mythology or the legend around this particular pool, and the reason so many sick and people with disabilities were around the pool, is that the idea was that every once in a while, an angel from heaven would appear by the edge of the pool with some kind of heaven stick or something and stir the pool. And if while he was stirring the pool, you got yourself into the water and you're the first one in the pool, you'd be healed. So literally all of these sick people are around the pool, and their entire story is built around this brokenness. They're thinking, I got to be first into the pool. I don't know what this guy's problem was. Maybe he wasn't sitting close enough to the pool. Maybe he needed someone to maybe you should sit on the edge. Maybe you should just live in the pool. I don't know. But he's never there quite at the right time. So his entire plan is based on this angel thing. Now, you might look at this guy, and you might go, dude, that's your plan? You have friends like that? You have friends like that where they're like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do with my life, or after school, and you're going, that's your plan? Wow, right? And you're trying to figure out how to even broach this. Like, you're gonna win the lottery. Awesome. Okay, that's what this guy's banking on. One day, I'm gonna win the lottery. This is his plan. It's not a very good plan. But that's his plan, and it's based around, again, it's built on his brokenness. So I want you to think about your own story, your own life, something that happened to you when you were younger or something that hurts you. And I want you to ask yourself, is your life still hinging on that brokenness? Is your life built on either avoiding it or trying to fix yourself? Because if so, you can relate directly to what's going on in this guy's life. Now, the third thing that I want to talk about is because we're broken, and because plans built on brokenness aren't generally the greatest plans, our plans and us, we tend to be very fragile. Right? When life gets difficult, we tend to get hurt. We tend to get disappointed with people. In fact, most of us, our plans for life and our plans for success, or our plans to finally leave that brokenness behind, or whatever it is, the plan to avoid the brokenness at all costs, it kind of depends on everybody doing everything they need to do for us. And because obviously they're put here for us, right? Like, you're in my life to make my life easy. Right? You're supposed to, Amy, you're supposed to love me the way I need to be loved, and when she doesn't love me that way, I get mad at her, and I get disappointed with her, and I get frustrated with her because she's not doing her job. I thought you were my friend. When you hear talk like that, what you're hearing is, you're not doing for me what I thought you would do for me. So what ends up happening, and you can see it again in Jack's life, is you start blaming people who are blocking you from achieving your goal, or keeping you from your goal, or people who have let you down, or could keep pressing that sore spot instead of owning the fact that maybe you're just still broken. Maybe it's not them. Maybe you're a big blubbering, festering mess, and where would they touch you where it wouldn't hurt? Right? So one of the ways that you know that there's unresolved brokenness in your life is if you are continually blaming people for the stuff that's going wrong in your life. If you are continually offended and easily hurt, you just found some brokenness. Now, I just want to tell you, there's not shame in being broken, but we need to own the fact that we are. Okay? So if you're easily hurt and you're blaming others all the time, that's a huge flag to say, you know what? There's something going on under the hood that you have not dealt with. Now, when you can't blame people, you blame circumstances, and that's called an excuse. So that's the second thing. So there's some things you can't blame on people. So Jack, he's saying, look, these stupid people in my life, like my dad, where's my dad? Shouldn't he be here at the poolside with his son? Why isn't he there for me? If he would just quit his job and be here for me and help me into the pool when the angel stirs the pool, I'd be out of here by now. Where are my friends? How come my friends aren't here helping me into the pool? He's blaming others. And then he's like, well, and even if I did have friends, I'm just not fast enough, and the timing's not right, and the sun's in my eyes, and like all of these different excuses that he makes for not being able to get in the pool. Can you relate? When you find yourself making excuses for your own lack of follow-through, or when you take those excuses and you project them onto others and you blame others, maybe it's because your plan wasn't a very good plan. And maybe it's based on the fact that you're broken and that all of this is stemming from the same place. So this is what happens. When our core problem is not dealt with, you're going to stay stuck in the same cycle. You're going to reinforce that brokenness, and you're going to kick people out of your life that keep hurting you in that way. You're going to start avoiding experiences where you have to face that excuse over and over again, and your life will gradually shrink until you're in Jack's position where your entire life is defined by this little mat. That's sad. But we do it all the time. Now, in Jack's life, this is what happens. One day, Jesus shows up. Now, he didn't know Jesus very well. I think that if he had known Jesus, because he didn't even know who he was. Later on, he didn't even know. It was the guy who healed me. He wasn't even sure. But if he had known Jesus, and like maybe this is me on the mat. If I was on the mat, I'd be like, oh, Jesus, sweet. I'm so glad you're here. So what I need you to do is I need you to get the sun out of my eyes. And I need you to fix the economy, because then I could, fulfill my dreams. And Jesus, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just get my idiot brother to come help me like you should, I would have been there by now, right? If my family would support me, if my friends would understand me, if they'd let me cry on their shoulder yet one more time, I would be free. And he's like, I don't think that's your problem. No, really, okay, I understand, okay. Maybe the pool isn't such a good plan. So if you could give me wisdom for a better plan, a different pool maybe. Maybe it's the wrong pool. Hey, everybody, we're at the wrong pool. Everybody follow me. We're going to go, and everyone's and they sit around this pool. How come there's nothing happening? There's an angel. Maybe it's that pool. Maybe it's this pool. Everyone's congregating around these false hopes. Maybe your plan is off. But this is how we pray. Jesus, I need you to bless my plan. And then, thank you for blessing my plan. Now I just need you to help these stupid people to get it together and help me. And then I need you to fix the economy and this and the timing and my boss and the policies at work and all of these things that we can blame for our lack of progress and our lack of freedom, when Jesus says, look, you know what? It's a good idea. Stop making excuses. Right? Yeah, quit blaming people. Get a better plan. But I'm here for you. And until you face that brokenness, you're not going to be free. You're going to keep choosing plans that revolve around that brokenness, which will then make you vulnerable to people. You'll end up blaming them again and making excuses, and you'll be in the same boat over and over and over again. In other words, he's saying, I am not your self-help guru. I'm not. I'm here for you. Oh, I'm fine. You're living on a rectangle. Just saying. Right, because Bob and because the sun and because the... No, right? Stop making excuses. Okay, I'll stop making excuses. Thanks, Pastor Brad. Great sermon. That's my takeaway. I'm going to stop making excuses. And if you're making excuses, good job. Stop making them, okay? Or some of you would be like, oh, I'm so convicted. I've been blaming others for my own shortcomings. I am so sorry. I'm going to go make amends. Yes, do that, please. That would be a great idea. Great idea. And some of you are going, oh, I've been trying to win the lottery. I've been basing my hopes on something I shouldn't base it on. And great. But what we need to do is we need to let Jesus address your brokenness, or you will keep doing the same thing you've always been doing. Now, this is what happens next. This is what Jesus does next. Watch this. Jesus says to him, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. Keep it, my brother. No. Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. And at once the man was made well, and he picked up his mat, and he walked. Oh, that's so good. That's such a good story. Because Jesus goes right after the core of the problem, and he even goes deeper. Because watch this. This is why we called him Jack. Jesus healed the brokenness that hatched the plan, that fed the blame, that perpetuated the excuses, that kept Jack in the house that he built. Okay, so I messed it up. But you see there, bang. So this is what Jesus did, right? He gets right to the core. I needed to practice that one. Thank you for humoring me. But watch this. When he says, get up, pick up your mat. So he gets up. He's still standing on the mat. So now to pick up the mat, he's got to do what? He's got to get off the mat. He's got to get off the mat. And in that moment, he realizes, my life is no longer bound by these boundaries. Jesus is right. You're free. You don't have to live in that little rectangle. I have just set you free. The possibilities are endless. So get off the mat and then pick it up. Pick up the mat. So he rolls up the mat and he picks up the mat. So he just learns. Why didn't Jesus tell him, you know what, you just may want to leave the mat for some other poor sap that's sitting here and isn't healed yet? Why did he have Jack pick up the mat? Because he wanted to show Jack, I just made you bigger than your problem. This mat that had kept you captive, you now have it under your arm. It used to bind you, and now you're above it. You're free. I've set you free. So don't live on the mat. And then he doesn't say, and then put it back down. No, carry your mat. So walk with the mat under your arm. Why? Because the moment he starts walking out of that porch with the mat, people are going to go, what are you doing? I'm healed. It's the greatest thing. What about the mat? Oh, this old thing? The mat that used to define your life. This old thing? This doesn't bind me anymore. Everywhere he carries the mat, he's going, this is who I used to be. This becomes a trophy of the power of Jesus now in his life. Isn't that brilliant? I love it. Now, watch what happens next. This is again, every single story I tell seems to be about church people behaving badly. But here, now that day was a Sabbath, and Jews had all kinds of rules back then about what you could and couldn't do on the Sabbath. It's supposed to be a day of rest, right? So the Jews said to the man who had been cured, let's just pause there for a second. A few verses ago, he was the invalid. Now he's the man who had been cured. He was the invalid. His entire life revolved around being an invalid on the size of this little postage stamp. That's where he lived his life. He had no hope for anything greater. And now he's not the invalid. He's the guy Jesus healed. How's that for an identity? That's great. That's all I need. In other words, his identity now is not based on what he could or could not do. It's based on what Jesus did for him, period. I'm the guy that Jesus healed. That's my new identity. Okay, so even they are picking up on this, even without realizing it. But then they said to the man who'd been cured, it's the Sabbath. It's not lawful for you to carry your mat. Welcome to church. Adventures in missing the points. Fantastic. Super. Now, watch this. 5 minutes or 2 minutes earlier, Jesus came to him and said, do you want to get well? Who does he blame? The people who aren't helping him. What's his excuse? I'm too slow. The timing's not right. So now they say, it's not legal, lawful for you to carry your mat. But he answered them, the man who made me well said to me, take up your mat and walk. So now his excuse is, why are you walking around carrying your mat? Because I'm healed. Because Jesus healed me. Well, why are you carrying your mat? Because he told me to. So now his excuse is Jesus. His blame is Jesus. Everything's pointing back to Jesus. It's Jesus, Jesus, all day, Jesus. That's all he can do. That's all he knows. He doesn't even know his name yet. It's the guy who healed me. Later on, he finds out it's Jesus. Oh, by the way, he goes back. I just figured it out. It was Jesus. Just so you know. It's like, yeah, we got that. Thanks. But he's like learning, but still everything's pointing to Jesus. So awesome. It's so good. Okay, so here's what I want you to hear near the end of this. The freedom of your soul is never dependent on circumstances lining up. It's never dependent on people treating you right. You need to hear this. Your soul's freedom is never dependent on anyone or anything other than Jesus and your response to him. That's it. If you are projecting your freedom onto a thing, it will disappoint you. If you're projecting your freedom onto a person, they will disappoint you, and your life will be full of excuses and blame based on a sketchy plan that cannot get you where you need to go. So this is what he finally learned. Now, last thought. How crazy would it have been if this story took a different turn? How crazy would it have been if Jesus said, pick up your mat and walk, and he just said, good word. That is the best news I've heard all day. I'm just going to sit here and soak in that. How crazy would it have been if he had heard these words from Jesus and had said, yeah, I really want to believe that, but I'm not sure if I can believe that. I've been here a very long time. And he stayed there because he's afraid to step up in faith and take what Jesus had done for him and put it into practice. That would have been the greatest tragedy of all. And we do it every day. Or we go, thank you so much, and we experience a surge of new energy, and we get up and we walk and we carry our mat, and then we start to remember our buddies at the pool and how fun it was to tan all day. And we're scared of getting a job now because we haven't had to get a job before, and we go back to the pool and we roll out our little mat and we sit on it as though Jesus hasn't done anything for us. How tragic would it have been to sit on that stupid mat again if they'd been set free, if he'd been set free. But again, we do this every day. So the New Testament, from the beginning to the very end, the message is you have been set free from the power of sin and death and darkness. He's rescued you from the domain of Satan and darkness. You are free. You are free. It is for freedom you've been set free. Do not yet let yourself be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Over and over and over and over again, which is why I've been saying Jesus has already done the work all the work that will ever need to be done for your freedom and my freedom. The reason we're not walking in it is because we're choosing to live our life defined by this mat. So I want you to hear today, I want you to hear Jesus come to you on your mat, whatever that is. And believe me, I've got my mats too. I want you to hear him in a fresh way, coming to you and saying, your name, Jack. I want you to hear him saying to you, get up, take your mat, and walk. Not because you have the strength in yourself, but because he just told you you did. Because what he says goes. So what would it be like this week as you find yourself starting to slide back into old patterns? Instead of fighting that, what would it be like for you to say, actually, this is just a fantasy. This temptation is a fantasy. Jesus has set me free. That's my new reality. I am going to carry this mat as a trophy to prove that he's made me bigger than this. I refuse to unroll it and lie back down where I've spent most of my life lying. Now, often, we need help believing something. And this is what Christ's body or the church is for. We help each other come to believe what Jesus has already said and done. We encourage each other. We spur each other on. So sometimes, and this is what I've told stories before about sitting down with people and doing prayer ministry. All that is helping someone to get into a position where they can believe in a fresh way what Jesus has already done. It's not doing some new work. It's connecting them to the work that Jesus has already done. So, if you're struggling, going, oh, but my issue, and I wish, I'm being defined by this mat, and I want to believe that Jesus has told me I can get up and walk, but I just don't know if I can. Maybe the prayer for you today, and I've done this before, maybe the prayer for you today is simple. Maybe it's just, Jesus, convince me. I'm having trouble with this. Convince me. And maybe even during the next song, as we sing about this beautiful Father, the Heavenly Father that sent Jesus to rescue us, and the goodness of that Father, maybe your prayer needs to be yourself, envisioning yourself reaching up for the hand of Jesus or that good Father and standing up in faith like you've never stood before and enjoying a new sense of freedom that you've never experienced before.